I could hardly believe my ears. Miles Tanner was asking to take Bunnicula away with him. Forever. He wanted our bunny to be his new muse and companion. I turned to Chester, who sat dumbfounded, his tongue half out of his mouth, his eyes as glazed as an Easter ham. The whole room had come to a standstill, all except for Howie, who began bouncing around on his back legs and yipping his head off. Take me! Take me! He yipped. I'm a better muse than Bunnicula. I'm cuter than Bunnicula. I stay awake more than Bunnicula. Sort of. Take me! Miles shrank back into the sofa cushions as Mr. Monroe got Howie to stop his noise. I'm sorry, Mr. Monroe said to Miles. No, it's not Howie's fault. I guess I still have some work to do on that, Miles said. My therapist, Dr. Verrett Katz, said I should start with stuffed animals and work my way up to the real things. You know Howie isn't barking at you because he thinks you're ugly or scary, said Mrs. Monroe. He's excited. I think he likes you. And you're not ugly or scary at all, said Marjorie. On the contrary, as for stuffed animals... She opened her purse and took out a tiny stuffed lion. I call him CL, she said. It stands for Cowardly Lion. I take him with me everywhere, for courage. Wait right here, Pete shouted. He stood up and thrust Bunnicula into Miles' arms before racing up the stairs and back down again in a flash. He had a stuffed koala bear. This is Pudgikins, he told Miles. I've had him since I was real little. Now I keep him under the bed in case... well, in case I need him, I guess. He shot a look at Kyle and Toby that said, If you ever tell anybody about this, you are dead meat. Miles smiled. Thank you, he said. Thank you for being so kind. I know I'm asking too much of you. I had never intended on asking it. I just wanted to be around Bunnicula to see if he inspired me. And I was inspired. I began writing a new book last night, even if I did end up turning the rabbit character into a bat. But I got frightened and thought I couldn't do it without Edgar. And then I realized that Edgar had something else in mind entirely. Edgar? Said Mr. Monroe. Yes, you see, I couldn't understand how it happened that Bunnicula was placed in my room, and why you put a salad next to my bed. And then I discovered an email addressed to you that I had never written. It had to have been written by someone else, and there was only one other someone else who could have done it. Edgar, Mr. Monroe repeated. Miles nodded. Edgar is mute. He has never spoken, never uttered a sound. I suspect it's because of his injury when he was young. But being a crow, and therefore a remarkably clever and adaptive creature, he taught himself how to write by watching me. It was he who wrote that email to you to ensure that I would spend a good deal of time with Bunnicula and get to see him in action. He wanted Bunnicula to be his replacement. You see, Edgar could have left me a long time ago, but he doesn't want me to be alone. He is the most considerate of birds, the gentlest of souls. Ah, I said, turning to Chester, so that's what nefarious means. This is no time for jokes, Chester snarled. We're about to lose Bunnicula, can't you see? If they let Tanner take him away from us... Were my eyes deceiving me? Was that a tear rolling down Chester's nose? Yes, Pete said. You can have him. The rest of the Monroe family started to object, but they stopped when they saw the look of hope on Miles's face. Really? He asked. Chester began to sniffle next to me. And then I thought I heard Howie barking. I cringed at the sound. But when I saw everyone in the room staring at me, I realized it wasn't Howie who was barking. It was me. Me, who hates the sound of it. I was barking and Chester was sniffling, and the humans didn't seem to have a clue what to do about any of it. Were we really going to have to say farewell to our bunny? You know, Miles, Miss Pickles said then, patting him on the arm, there may be other ways to solve this. I don't think the Monroes really want to part with their dear pet, and I don't think you'd really want to have them do so. I have a rabbit for you, Mr. Tanner, shouted Kyle. See, one time Pete and I did this hair-raising project for Scouts. That probably sounded like a joke, but I didn't mean it that way. I mean, we bred rabbits, and Bunnicula was the dad, and I have a son, see? Sanicula! And the other day my mom said that she was afraid she was developing an allergy to him, and maybe we should find him a new home. And so, what if he goes to live with you? Miles looked down at the sleeping rabbit in his arms. It wouldn't be Bunnicula, he said. No, said Kyle, but it would be fine. Everyone cheered, and Chester began to purr. The next day, after Miles returned from visiting Pete's school, we all went out into the backyard to say farewell to Edgar. Miss Pickles was there, and so was Kyle. And so was Sanicula, although, since it was still daylight outside, he was sound asleep on Miles's bed up in the guest room. Miles took to Bunnicula right away, although he said, and who would argue, that no one could ever really replace Edgar. Now he watched Edgar's flock flapping its wings in anticipation of leaving. Suddenly one of the birds flew down and landed on Miles's shoulder. He nipped him on the ear, and Miles stroked his feathers. "You've been a good friend," Miles said. "Thank you for everything. I will never forget you. Never." Edgar flew off to join the one who was waiting for him, and then he flew back one last time, grabbing Miss Pickle's scarf in his beak and drawing her towards Miles. He hopped onto Miles's shoulder and tugged at his ear until Miles was forced to move towards Miss Pickles. Once their arms were touching, he flew down to grab the cuff of Miles's shirt, pulling it up until Miles' hand was almost in Miss Pickles'. Miles turned red and smiled at Miss Pickles. "Clever bird," he said. Miles and Miss Pickles lifted their eyes skyward as Edgar flew off, and the birds rustled and flapped and began to grow smaller in the distance. "Goodbye, Edgar," Miles called. There was a catch in his voice as he cried out, "Will you forget me?" The crows spread out across the sky and went into a formation. The formation was a word, and the word was nevermore. I am writing this from my sheep farm in northern Vermont. My yard is filled with crows, and I find I have grown quite fond of these birds, with their shiny feathers, saw-toothed cries, and mischievous ways. I like to imagine that Edgar and his family may be among them, but then I also find myself searching pumpkin patches for white pumpkins with a hint of orange. I can't help being a bit sentimental when I think how fortunate I was to be able to edit this book, for it helped me see that change is a good thing, even if it means letting go of what's safe and known. As Harold has always said, life is an adventure, and adventures are meant to be shared. So here I am sharing my adventures as a sheep farmer with my family and looking forward to whatever life has in store for me. Not that I'm done with editing entirely, mind you. My publisher asked me to continue working on a handful of books for my farm, and there's a certain young writer whose books I look forward to editing. But I'll let Harold explain. I received the following letter from him a short time ago. "My dear friend, I hope you are doing well. All is well here in the Monroe household. We are relieved that Bunnicula is still with us. Even Chester, who maintains that that was not a tear and he did not sniffle at the thought of Bunnicula being taken from us. He claims he was having an allergic reaction to what he never said. Still, I can't help but notice that he is more protective of Bunnicula than ever and spends an inordinate amount of time around his cage. As for me, I am enjoying my retirement from writing, although I must admit I will miss visiting you in your office. I was especially fond of the snack machine at the end of the corridor. However, should you ever need help with your sheep, I would be happy to pay a visit. I do have some herder in me, and I know Howie would love to come along if you have any crows that need chasing. Pete received a letter from Miles the other day, and I thought you would enjoy knowing what he had to say. I have good news. Marjorie and I are to be wed. I will be moving to Centerville because I do not want her to have to leave your school library, where she feels so at home and needed. So, we shall be neighbors. Do I have to tell you that Howie practically did cartwheels upon hearing this news? The other good news is that I am writing again. My brief visit with you motivated me to write 2 books. The first, which I have just completed, is entitled Quoth the Raven. It is the story of my relationship with Edgar, and I am publishing it under my own name, Miles Tanner. M.T. Grays will continue to write the Flesh Crawlers books, although no animals will be transformed or harmed in any way in the making of these books ever again. Instead of the story about the rabbit that turned into a bat, I've decided to write an entirely different book called The Excellently Weird Adventures of Charlie the Cat for Gallery Wine. Can you guess who inspired that one? Needless to say, Chester is less than thrilled that he is to be a psycho creature in one of M.T. Gray's demented novels. But Howie's beside himself that we will all be characters in the final scene of Quoth the Raven, which takes place in our own backyard at the time Edgar is set free. Encouraged by the visit from his favorite author, Howie has begun writing his own books. I think they might turn out to be rather good. May I send you the first one when he's finished? It has something to do with a mad scientist and a stuffed animal named Pudgikins. I think you will like it. I think I will like it. I'll miss working with Harold, but it's always good to work with beginning writers. Everyone needs a change. Everyone needs something new. And everyone needs good company and the inspiration it brings. And now, I must go tend to my sheep. Harold Monroe is the nom de plume of Harold X, dog by day, rider by night, and sometimes by day when he isn't napping. Harold has written other books about his family and their adventures. Bunnicula, Halliday Inn, The Celery Stalks at Midnight, Nighty Nightmare, Return to Halliday Inn, and Bunnicula Strikes Again. He is also the author of Why Is My Food Dish Empty?, a mystery thriller that remains unpublished. He did not plan on becoming a writer, but years ago, when an unusual rabbit joined the household and vegetables mysteriously started turning white, someone had to write about it, and it certainly wasn't going to be Chester, who was too busy hyperventilating and saying things like, "Today vegetables, tomorrow's the world." Harold loves chocolate, especially chocolate cupcakes with cream in the middle. He is also fond of broccoli, bacon, and banana cream pie, although not together. Now that Howie is writing books, Harold is looking forward to retiring. He plans to spend his golden years enjoying his hobbies, which are eating, sleeping, and, well, eating and sleeping. Despite the fame and fortune his books have brought him, Harold does not own a cell phone. Howie Monroe is the nom de plume of Howie X, even though he really has no idea what a nom de plume is and thinks X is a weird last name. The talented, smart, funny, clever, and cute as a button wire-haired dachshund puppy has been writing books since 1230. Just kidding. He's been writing books ever since M.T. Graves came to stay at his house and his Uncle Harold found an unused notebook under Pete's bed. In a burst of creative genius, Howie had wrote 6 books, and they've all been published. The series is called Tales from the House of Bunnicula, although Bunnicula isn't in any of them. That was his publisher's idea. If Howie'd had his way, the series would have been called Tales from the Talented, Smart, Funny, Clever, and Cute as a Button Mind of Howie Monroe. Howie's first book, It Came From Beneath the Bed, is about a mad scientist, Pete Monroe, and a koala bear named Pudgikins. It's pretty good, but Howie thinks his later books are even better, even if none of them has ever won a Newbery Award. He thinks Screaming Mummies of the Pharaoh's Tomb 2, which he wrote with his friend Delilah, not only should have won a Newbery Award, it should have been made into a movie and maybe a TV series, none of which has happened. Life is unfair, especially if you're a writer and a dog. When he isn't writing, Howie Monroe likes to chase birds, bark at Joe the mailman, and makes hysterically funny jokes. Howie wants to thank Miles Tanner for inspiring him, Uncle Harold for helping him, and readers everywhere for reading him. Look for Howie's Tales from the House of Bunnicula series wherever fine books are sold, or under your bed, because you'll never know what you find there.